It was just past 7 when I turned onto our street, the air outside heavy with that end-of-summer humidity that makes even the light feel tired. The sky was dimming, streaked with the last traces of coral and ash-gray clouds, the kind of sky that looks both alive and fading at once. The hum of the car engine filled the silence as I slowed in front of our gate. I'd been gone for 10 days, a short business trip, though it felt longer somehow. 10 days of airports, hotel rooms that all smelled like cleaning fluid, and polite laughter over conference dinners. I'd missed home. Or at least I'd missed what home was supposed to feel like. But the driveway looked wrong. Before I even cut the engine, I saw them, piled just inside the gate, leaning against the metal fence like unwanted guests. Black garbage bags. Dozens of them. Some half-collapsed, others tied too tightly. There was a cardboard box balanced on top. I recognized my own handwriting scrawled across the side in fading marker. Winter clothes. Ella. For a second, my brain refused to connect the image to reality. It felt too absurd, too unreal. Like walking into someone else's dream. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, listening to the engine idle as the world around me slowly dimmed into night. The sound that finally snapped me out of it was the light clink of a mug against wood. I turned. The porch light flickered on, spilling a soft gold over the steps. And there she was, my mother. Her silhouette looked exactly the same, though smaller somehow. She was wearing her usual pale cardigan, the one with the tiny pearl buttons, her hair tied back neatly like she'd been expecting company. But she didn't look surprised to see me. Not at all. Her expression was calm. Too calm. She raised the mug to her lips, took a sip, and said in a voice that barely carried across the yard, "Back early?" Her tone was conversational, like we were discussing the weather. I stepped out of the car slowly, the gravel crunching beneath my heels. My chest felt tight, my words caught somewhere between disbelief and dread. "What's all this?" I asked, my voice thin, almost childlike. She looked down at the garbage bags, then back at me. "Your things? My things?" I repeated, as if saying it would make it make sense. "I thought it would be easier this way," she said simply, setting the mug down on the porch rail. I laughed, one of those short, broken laughs that sound more like breathing wrong. Easier for who? For everyone. I looked at her face carefully then, searching for a hint of guilt or hesitation or even embarrassment. But there was nothing. Just that quiet, deliberate composure she'd mastered my whole life. She used to do this even when I was a kid, talk about the hardest things as though they were errands. When Dad left, when she sold his car, when she told me not to cry because things just end sometimes. "Mom," I said slowly, taking a step closer. "What are you talking about?" "I've been gone a week." 10 days, she corrected gently. And in that time I realized, this arrangement isn't working. "This arrangement?" I repeated. "You mean me living here? In my own house?" She tilted her head, eyes calm, voice measured. "You've been saying for years that you were going to move out. You just never did. I thought," she shrugged lightly, "I'd help you finish the sentence." The streetlight beside the gate flickered on, humming faintly. The orange glow hit the bags, making the plastic shine like oil. I looked back at them, the shapes of my life sealed away in crinkled darkness. My books, my sweaters, the lamp I bought from a flea market in college. Maybe even the stuffed bear Dad gave me when I was 9. Everything that made this place mine. "You packed my room," I said quietly. Without asking me, she nodded as if I'd just confirmed something obvious. "I figured it was time. You're gone so often. It's just space being wasted. Space being wasted." Her words landed heavier than I expected. They hung in the air, thick and sharp. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling despite myself, "I live here. I pay half the bills." She cut me off gently. "You stay here." There's a difference. I took another breath. The air felt heavier by the second. "So you decided to throw me out while I was gone?" She sighed, the kind of sigh people make when they think they're being patient. "Don't dramatize it. I didn't throw you out. I just organized things. Like I was clutter." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Me by the car, her on the porch. Between us, the bags sat like witnesses, silent and undeniable. A memory flashed. Her voice when I was 16. telling me to keep my voice down because Dad had enough on his mind. Her eyes when I told her at 20 that I'd gotten a job 2 cities away, flat, unreadable. Her cold nod when I said I'd be away for training this month. I'd mistaken her silence for peace all my life. But maybe it had always been distance. I swallowed hard. You could have called me. Her face softened for just a second. You would have argued. I stared at her. You mean I would have had feelings about it? She didn't answer. The porch light buzzed again, then steadied. The sound of a cicada whirred somewhere in the dark trees. And I realized, in that quiet moment, that this wasn't spontaneous. She'd planned this. The bags weren't new. Some had been taped up for days. How long? I asked. She hesitated. A tiny pause that said more than any answer could. A week. So basically, I said, my voice low now, you waited for me to leave, then erased me. Her eyes met mine then. Calm, unflinching. You make it sound cruel, Ella. I'm giving you what you always said you wanted. Independence. I felt something twist inside me. That's not what this is. You're not giving me anything. I stopped myself. My voice cracked on the last word. She picked up her mug again, her hand steady. You'll thank me someday. I wanted to scream, to ask her how years of being careful around her, of never raising my voice, never being too much, could still lead to this. But something in me broke quietly instead. Not in anger, in understanding. This wasn't punishment. It was release. The last sunlight faded completely, leaving the driveway in half shadow. I looked at her one last time, her figure framed by the doorway, her face unreadable, and then at the house behind her, the only home I'd ever had. I realized then that I'd already been gone long before I packed a single bag. I unlocked the door slowly, half expecting her to stop me. But she didn't. She just stood on the porch, still holding that mug like a prop she didn't know how to put down. The house smelled too clean. Lemon polish and detergent, the smell she always used when she wanted to erase something. The air was heavy with it, like she'd been scrubbing the walls. My heels clicked softly against the hardwood as I stepped inside. Everything looked familiar, but slightly wrong. The hallway mirror was gone. The vase I'd bought last spring, the blue one, wasn't on the console anymore. The framed photos that used to line the stairway had been replaced with blank walls. I paused halfway up the stairs and ran my hand along the railing, remembering how my dad used to paint it every summer. The house had always been his pride before he left. He'd built it for us. That was how he phrased it back then. For us? When he walked away, she told me, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." He's gone, that's all. I was 12. And somehow, I believed her. Now walking up those same stairs years later, it felt like I was walking through a mausoleum of things she'd already decided were over. The door to my room was half open. I pushed it wider, and the first thing that hit me was the emptiness. The soft echo of a space that used to breathe. The walls were bare, pale, clean, silent. My shelves were stripped, my desk cleared, even the curtains gone. There was a faint square of lighter paint where my bookshelf used to stand, and another where my bulletin board had been. All that was left was the carpet, pressed flat where furniture used to sit, and the air, still and slightly sweet from the cleaning spray she loved. It was like walking into a photograph of something that no longer existed. I stepped inside, feeling the hollowness settle around me. My reflection caught in the window, a ghost in my own house. Behind me, I heard her voice, calm, controlled. "I didn't think you'd mind." I turned slowly. "You didn't think I'd mind that you emptied my room while I was gone?" She stood in the doorway, her posture perfect, like she was bracing herself for criticism, but determined to appear composed. "You haven't really been here for a while, Ella. You work out of town most weeks. You barely talk when you are here." "It's not personal." "Not personal?" I said quietly. "You went through my things." "I sorted them," she corrected. "There's a difference." I laughed, a sound so small it barely counted. "You sorted my life into garbage bags." Her expression flickered, the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth. But then she smoothed it out again. "You have to admit it was coming. You've outgrown this place." I looked around the room. "Outgrown it or been pushed out of it?" That landed. Her jaw tightened. "You're being unfair." "No," I said softly. "I'm being honest." For a moment we just stared at each other. There was something almost theatrical about it. Two women standing in an empty room, both pretending it didn't hurt. She broke eye contact first. "I've already rented the room," she said, her tone clipped. "Janine's daughter is starting her nursing rotation next week. She needed a quiet place." It took me a few seconds to process the words. "You rented my room?" She nodded, matter of fact. "It's a big house, Ella. I could use the help." I blinked at her, disbelief flooding in slow waves. "So what am I supposed to do? Just leave? Tonight?" Her shoulders lifted in a small shrug. "You have your car. And your job. You're capable." There it was again, that word, capable. She used it every time. She wanted to sound proud while actually creating distance. "You've always been so capable," she'd say when I fixed something on my own. "You'll figure it out," when I cried after Dad left. "You're strong," when I needed comfort. It was her way of telling me, don't ask for help. I sat down on the floor where my bed used to be. The carpet was rough under my palms. A tiny part of me, the part that still believed there was a bridge left to repair, wanted to ask her why. Why she couldn't have just waited, called, or at least pretended this was hard for her too. But the rest of me knew. This had been building for years. In the silences, the half-answers, the constant politeness that replaced love. I looked up at her. "You could have told me." Her eyes met mine briefly before drifting toward the window. "You would have argued," she said again, her voice flat. "I should have," I whispered. She frowned slightly. "You're overreacting. I did this to make things easier. For both of us. For you," I corrected quietly. Her lips pressed together, no denial, no apology. Just that same controlled stillness. It hit me then. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even trying to hurt me. She was done. And somehow, that was worse. The kind of cruelty that doesn't come from rage, but from calm detachment. The kind that makes you feel like disappearing isn't even dramatic. It's expected. I ran my fingers along the carpet fibers, tracing small circles. "You remember when Dad left?" I asked suddenly, her shoulders stiffened. "Of course I do." He said he needed space. That's the word he used. Space. I glanced up at her. Guess we both know what that really means now. Her face didn't change, but I saw something flicker. Maybe guilt. Maybe recognition. "I'm not your father," she said softly. "No," I said, standing up slowly. "You're just someone who learned how to leave without moving." The silence that followed felt alive. For a few seconds, I thought she might say something. Anything. A defense, a memory, a reason. But she didn't. She turned and walked down the hallway instead, her footsteps steady, her mug still in her hand. The air seemed to collapse in her absence. I looked around one more time. The faint ghost outlines on the wall, the dust rings where my books used to sit, the sunlight fading into a dull blue through the window. Everything about the room seemed to echo one truth. It wasn't mine anymore. It probably never had been. I sat there until the shadows deepened and the house started creaking. That old, familiar sound of settling wood. The sound I used to find comforting as a child. But tonight, it sounded like the house itself was exhaling me. When I finally stood, the floorboards groaned under my weight. A soft, reluctant farewell. I walked back down the stairs, my fingers brushing the wall as I passed the empty picture frames. At the bottom, the faint smell of her tea still hung in the air. She was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read the mail. Neither of us spoke. I could have said so many things. "Why now? How could you? Do you really not care?" But all the words felt useless, too small for the space between us. So I just nodded toward the door and said, "I'll get the rest of my things." She didn't stop me. Didn't even look up. And that was the moment I finally understood that silence could be an answer. It was fully dark by the time I began carrying the first bag outside. The air had cooled, that soft, aching kind of cool that comes after a long, hot day, when everything finally exhales. The crickets were loud, a chorus of tiny, indifferent voices, and somewhere far down the road a dog barked once and went quiet. The garbage bags were heavier than I expected. Not just from the weight, but from what they carried. The quiet ache of things I once thought I'd need forever. I stacked them one by one beside the car, the plastic brushing against my legs with that faint crackle that somehow felt too loud. Mom stood at the doorway watching. She didn't move, didn't offer to help. She just watched. The porch light above her flickered occasionally, washing her face in pale gold and then taking it away. Each time it went out, she disappeared for a heartbeat, a woman fading in and out of my past. "Careful with that one," she said finally, when I picked up the last box. Her tone wasn't sharp, but it wasn't gentle either. Just functional. I looked down. The box was labeled Memories in my own handwriting, the ink slightly smudged. The tape had already begun to peel at the corners, like even the glue had lost its will to hold. I carried it carefully to the trunk and set it down beside the rest. When I lifted the lid to check, I saw it, a single photograph resting on top, caught between an old scarf and a stack of notebooks. It was me at 12, holding a blue ribbon from my first art fair. My mother's arm was around my shoulder, both of us smiling, sunlight on our faces. I sat down on the edge of the trunk and stared at it for a long moment. I remembered that day, the smell of paint and sawdust, how she'd surprised me by showing up after saying she couldn't get off work. How she'd brought me ice cream after and told me she was proud. I'd believed her. I'd framed that photo myself. Now holding it, I couldn't tell which part hurt more, that I'd once felt so loved, or that it had faded so quietly I hadn't noticed it happening. I heard her steps then, slow against the porch. She came down halfway, arms crossed. "You don't have to take everything tonight," she said. I looked at her, the photo still in my hand. "No," I said softly. "I think I do." She nodded once, then looked away, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. "You'll find somewhere. You always do." There it was again, the quiet dismissal disguised as faith. I turned the photo toward her. "Do you remember this?" Her gaze flickered briefly. "Of course. You look happy," I said. "I was," she replied simply. "And now?" She hesitated, then said, "Now I'm at peace." I nodded. "I'm trying to get there too." She tilted her head, studying me. "You sound angry." "I'm not," I said truthfully. "Just done." Something shifted in her eyes then. A tiny crack in that perfect composure, but it was gone before I could name it. I slipped the photograph back into the box. "Keep it," I said quietly, her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because it looks like we meant it," I said. For the first time all night, she didn't have a ready answer. She just stood there, her hands tightening on her arms. Her expression unreadable in the half-light. The sound of insects filled the pause between us, soft, endless, alive. I closed the trunk gently and brushed the dust from my hands. The motion felt final, almost ceremonial. When I turned back, she was still watching. The porch light flickered again, buzzing softly. "I never meant to hurt you," she said at last. The words were quiet, almost swallowed by the night air. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes it worse." Her shoulders sagged then, just a little. She looked older suddenly, smaller. I almost took a step forward, almost said something kind. But kindness is a currency you learn to spend carefully, so I just nodded instead. "I hope she's everything you wanted," I said. "Who?" she asked, confused. "Janine's daughter." Understanding flickered, then faded into something like shame. "She's just renting a room, Ella." I smiled faintly. So was I. The quiet stretched again, heavier now. I turned toward the car, opened the door, and sat for a moment with my hand on the steering wheel. The seat was warm from the day's sun, the air outside thick with the smell of earth and night. I thought of all the times I'd left this driveway before, for school, for work, for life, always believing I'd return to something waiting. But maybe home was never the house. Maybe it was the version of me that kept hoping she'd change. The engine hummed to life. The headlights cut through the dark, spilling over the fence and the bags I hadn't yet fit in the trunk. I looked back one last time. She was still standing on the porch, one hand resting on the rail, her face caught in the soft gold of the flickering light. For the briefest second, she looked uncertain, like she was about to call my name. But she didn't. She just watched, small and still, as I put the car in reverse. The tires crunched over gravel. Slow and steady, at the gate I stopped. The reflection of the house shimmered in my rearview mirror, not like something I was leaving, but like something already fading into memory. I rolled down the window. The air was cooler now, cleaner somehow. The bags rustled gently beside the fence, and for a moment, the sound reminded me of ocean waves, far, distant, forgiving. Goodbye, Mom, I said softly. She couldn't hear me, but maybe she didn't need to. I turned the wheel, eased onto the road, and drove away. For a while, I kept expecting the weight in my chest to grow heavier, but as the distance stretched, something else filled the space. Not joy, not relief, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything from you. Streetlights passed like slow, steady pulses of light. Each one dimmed behind me until all that remained was the dark road ahead. I thought of the photograph again, her arm around me, our smiles, the sun on our faces. Maybe that was all that needed to remain, the proof that once there had been warmth, even if it couldn't last. I reached over and turned on the radio. A soft instrumental filled the car, low and steady, like a heartbeat that had finally slowed down. At the next stoplight, I caught my reflection in the side window. Tired, yes, but calm. There was something almost new in my face, something unburdened, and it hit me then. Peace doesn't always come dressed in forgiveness or closure. Sometimes it comes in garbage bags by a gate. Sometimes it begins when you finally drive away. The light turned green. I pressed my foot to the pedal, and this time I didn't look back.